Cash Talks. Let's make that move.
Real estate rates and real talk. Welcome back to Cash Talks, where I'm going to have our infamous lender from Glendale, California, Mr. Dave D'Souza with Primary Residential Mortgage, back on tonight, bringing his expertise, his years of knowledge back to the table so we can talk about all things mortgage rates. And we're also going to talk about what's going on in our real estate market, especially Southern California, Idaho, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and what's happening with our distressed property levels. There's been a lot of talk of that increasing. We've got more foreclosures coming up, short sales building up. Let's talk about that in a minute. But first, I'm going to bring on Dave D'Souza so we can talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about robots tonight, too, because that could be coming for your job real soon. So we want to make sure we chat about that, too. So, Dave, welcome aboard, pal.
Thank you for having me, Cash. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Love having you on board, man. So can you fill us in, Dave? What's going on with the mortgage rate world out there? I know the volatility is still bouncing around a little bit. A lot of people calling this, clients calling you and me every day going, what is going on with these rates? Where are we at? What can we do to get into a house today? What do you have to share with us, Dave?
All right, let me share a couple things. Thank you for the intro there. First of all, as many of you may know, and some of you may not, we have a special FHA program where you can do 100% financing up to $1.25 million on a single family dwelling in LA County, and up to $1.6 million on a duplex, again, with zero down, 100% financing, no income limits, and no first-time buyer requirements. So that's definitely a very good start to help people who have the income to buy something, maybe just don't have the down payment saved. If you are planning on doing a mortgage purchase or refinance over the next, let's say, the course of 2025 or early 2026, please make sure and send us copies of your drafts of your 2024 taxes before you file them with the IRS so that we can take a look at them and figure out if there's anything on there that might prevent you from qualifying. Last but not least, here's a quick update on recap of what happened last week. Interest rates were actually pretty flat last week. They went up a little, went down a little. Ended the week about 6.5% was our par rate as of close of business Friday. That improved a little bit today to 6.375. That's interest rates. The stock market, however, actually had a really, a little bit of a rebound last week. Was up about somewhere between 4.5% to 5% for the week. Good news for your 401k, good news for your stock investments. A lot of that had to do with the Trump administration announcing that they're sort of backing off a little bit on the aggressive stance they were taking on the tariffs, especially with China. And so while we have definitely not gained back what we lost prior to the tariff hike, we've probably gained back about, I want to say 40 to 50% of what we lost. So we're definitely on the road to recovery there. Wall Street is anxiously awaiting negotiations and talks between the U.S. and China on tariffs. Any resolution there will certainly be very good for both stocks and for interest rates. That is a quick recap on what happened with the markets last week. And back to you, Mr. Cash.
Well, Dave, thanks a lot for that. And then that's some exciting news for the help on some of those with the FHA and some of the loan limits increasing with zero down. That's fantastic.
I mean, if you think about it, zero down up to 1.25 million on a single family dwelling in LA County and up to 1.6 million on a duplex, 0% down.
Yeah.
And no first-time home buyer requirement. So if you've owned a home within the last 3 years, no problem.
Okay.
And of course, the other part of it is that besides having no first-time buyer requirements, there's no income limits. So even somebody who makes combined family income $300,000-$500,000 a year, it doesn't disqualify you from the program. Excellent way to get a lot of people that don't have a down payment saved into a new home.
When someone's going up to that 1.6 million for a duplex, are they able to use the other unit for part of the income to help their DTI scores, their debt to income ratio?
As a matter of fact, they qualify with the whole payment, but the income from the other unit, let's say you're buying a duplex and the income from the other unit is going to be, let's say $2,500 a month.
Right.
You take a vacancy factor of 15 to 25%, depending on what the vacancy factor is for the area, and that gets added to your income. So absolutely, the income from the other unit will help you qualify.
Okay. $2,500 a month. What is that, a one bedroom? Your neck of the woods?
Well, it could be a 3-bedroom. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, $2,500 a month is probably a 1 bedroom and maybe a studio, maybe a 1 bedroom, 1 bath.
Right.
But again, it just depends. And there are areas where you can get a 2 bedroom, a 2+1 for 2,500.
Gotcha.
If you're looking at 2+2 and 3+2s for a secondary unit, if you can even find those are typically going to be, $3,000 and 3,500 a month for that kind of a unit.
Amazing. Amazing. You could a lot of times own a property for about what you'd rent it for these days if you do it right. The interest rates might throw a little curveball at you, but there's ways around that. And we can always talk about that later. Remember out there, if you have questions about how can I get into a home, the rate's too high right now. What can I do to get that lower? We have strategies for that. Dave and I can both fill you in on that anytime. So reach out to us anytime with that.
And
Dave,
again, that also varies not just on the location, but the condition of the property, right? So if
right.
you've got two identical properties, identical neighborhood, one of them is completely upgraded and the other one is severely, much older, dated with old fixtures and lead pipes and things like this, that
Right.
can also make a difference in the price that you get. So at the end of the day, there are a wide range of things that affect it. But, by and large, to be able to buy a single family for 1.25 million with no money down, or a duplex at up to 1.6 million with no money down, is pretty incredible. And no income limits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. Dave, I know that it was down to 6.5, the rate that you were getting for your par borrower. Did I hear you say 6.375? Did I hear
Today,
that right?
yes, there was an improvement in the market today. Just today, there was an improvement. Again, these rates change daily. That could be back up to 6.5 tomorrow. It could go down to 6.25 tomorrow. It just depends on what the market does. The market, one thing that is very common right now in the market is volatility. Both in the stock market and in the bond market is volatility. Because investors, generally speaking, with all of what's going on in Washington right now, investors are unsure.
Right.
And whenever investors are unsure, you'll see a lot more volatility than a consistent market up or a consistent market down.
I'll tell you, Dave, I don't know. And I mean, my 18 years doing real estate, the volatility has been some of the most intense that I've seen. How about yourself?
Correct. The volatility index right now is higher than it's been in a very long time.
Jeez, Christ. Unbelievable. And I hope it slows down soon. We're looking forward to that, but I don't see that in any part of the near future. Do you?
Well, and again, without referring this in any way, shape, or form as a partisan comment, typically Wall Street takes its comfort level and in turn the volatility level from a number of different things. One of the things that definitely affects Wall Street is what's coming out of Washington, D.C. Another thing that affects the Wall Street is global economic, global factors like war. You've got the Russia-Ukraine war. You've got what's going on in the Middle East. If any one of those situations starts to escalate to the point where there's a severe threat of, let's say, nuclear war, you can bet that's going to have a immediate, devastating and drastic effect on both Wall Street and the bond market. So a pandemic. Right. If tomorrow the bird flu pandemic took a huge jump up and all of a sudden everybody started to, Wall Street started to panic that this was now going to become what happened with COVID, you would see stocks drop like crazy. You would see interest rates drop like crazy.
Yeah.
But then again, at what cost?
Exactly. Yeah. And none of us want that. We don't want to wait around for something catastrophic to happen just to lower rates, because as we talked before in one of our past podcasts is that, there's people that have that thought, I'm going to wait till something horrible happens and the rates drop down so low, historical low again, like in
you don't want like 1.5 million people to die so you can get a 2.99% interest rate on your mortgage, right?
Right. Exactly. But remember we talked about there's not a lot of people that when something horrible happens in the world and the media and the news is just cramming it down everybody's throats and the fear factor is all over the place, that somebody's going to go out and buy one of the largest purchases in their life, a house, right? And they've been waiting for this. Now it's the glory time. The rates are so low, the prices have dropped. But then again, their job has probably had a challenge. Their other finances have had a challenge. They're scared. They're concerned. They're worried about the rest of the world and this thing ever bouncing back. It always does. And I mean, I've seen horrible times like the crash and some of the other things we have in COVID and things everybody thought the end was here, and it bounces back every single time. Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you a concrete example. Right before COVID, the stock market, the Dow was at about 36,000. It dropped down to 18,000 when COVID hit. It lost 50% of its steam.
Right.
And right now it's cruising around 42, 43, something like that. And it's still not at its high. It was probably around 44, 45. So it's much closer to its high. It's even surpassed where it was before COVID. So it's very true. What goes down does come back up.
Right, right. Yeah. Murphy's Law, right? So, Dave, I appreciate that. Again, anybody out there, our listeners, if you have questions about rates, anything, strategies we could do to help improve the rates, get you into the homes, improve those DTI levels, just let us know. We're always happy to talk about it anytime. I want to talk to you a little bit about Santa Clarita. I want to break some numbers down for you there. I've dug deep into that. And it's very interesting because not only the nation, but the other states that I do work in are very similar. So, Santa Clarita, just for example, right now, in 2025 here, our active listing levels, our inventory has increased, right? It has been increasing. It's been increasing all over the nation. And just to give you some numbers of how that looks right now is last year at this time, we had 348 active listings. And that was kind of on the higher side. I had seen it in the twos. I'd been working in the market when it was in the twos, the mid twos, and then started creeping up a little bit and then bouncing back and forth because our inventory level as far as pendings was always around that 47, 45, 47%, which would put that about 303 homes pending at the same time. So some people would include that in the active inventory, but I don't because those are already not active. They're in escrow. They're pending. They've accepted an offer and they're going through the escrow period, call it 30 days to 60 days. And that baby should be gone. Some of them will bounce back onto the market, but it's been a pretty slow rate of that. It had been pretty high as of lately, around 14, 15% of homes were coming back on the market. Bombing, we call it, back on market. But we're not seeing a lot of that right now. So we're seeing some improvement in that arena as well. We are seeing days on market have increased a little bit over last year too. Nothing significant, nothing to worry about, but it has increased more. And a lot of that is because the inventory has picked up. Buyers have more choices. And the buyer demand slowed a little bit when it did get down to that 6% number or close to it, Dave, when we got down to like, what was it, about 6 and 8, I believe it was.
Yes.
And the market was starting, it was
Six
like
and 8 is the closest we got to 6%.
6 and what? I'm sorry?
6.125 is the closest we got to the 6% threshold that we were hoping to see.
6.125. And that was like turning the faucet on, right? We were seeing buyers just trickling in the market.
Right before sometime around April 2nd, the administration made an announcement about the serious hike in tariffs. Right before that is when we were literally around 6.125.
Exactly. Spot on. Yep. And I sold a couple of homes, some listings that were really nice. And again, the listing does matter. You know, the house needs to be in really good shape. Buyers are a little more persnickety these days, right? So you need to be in a great location, got a nice home, good condition, marketed very well, and priced right. And it's going to move pretty quickly, right? But if there's any of those conditions are off kilter just a little bit, it might throw a little kink in the program, increase your days on market a little bit, but they're still moving. Even though they're sitting on the market a little bit longer, people are finally coming around. Someone's going to buy. They have maybe some more cash to put down, or they've talked to a good lender like Dave, and they figured out a way to lower that rate and improve their DTIs, and they can now afford to buy something, you know, not necessarily 7% interest rate, which that has priced a lot of people out of the market. But now we're getting down to that, you know, where you're at 6.25 or 6.35, I think it was, right? 6.35 right now.
Well, and that is going to help interject something on the heels of what you're saying here.
Yeah.
If you're borrowing at a 2.99% rate and the property isn't quite where you want it to be, there's a little more flexibility to be able to say, okay, I've got room to play because my mortgage is affordable.
Right.
If you're having to buy that same property at 6.5%, then there's a little less room to fix it up. So that's why I think I would agree with you that in a situation where you've got these slightly higher rates, people are saying, look, at these higher rates, I'm a little closer to my threshold. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm going to do that. And on top of that, have to fix up the house.
Right. Exactly.
So they're being more discriminating about the condition of the property.
Right. Absolutely. So, and I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you. That always helps. So Santa Clarita, last year, this time, 348 active listings. Today, we're right around 665 active listings on the market, getting close to that same pending ratio of about 32%, a little bit less because we have more inventory now. So we've come very close to doubling our inventory from this time last year. Okay. So that's what's happening there. San Fernando is very similar to the Valley, is doing a lot of the same thing in Los Angeles as well. We're seeing inventory picking up everywhere. It's happening in Boise, Idaho as well. We do have a little bit more buyer activity in Boise, Idaho area, the Treasure Valley and all the surrounding areas over there. That seems to have a little more movement right now. But the affordability factors really depends what price range you're looking at. Santa Clarita, the 600,000 to 800,000 price range, boom, moving, flying. even the million up to 800 to a million. That one's moving real well too. You're trying to find something under 600,000 in the Santa Clarita or surrounding market, or even the San Fernando Valley. Really tough. I mean, you are battling it out in that price range right there. So if you're in any of these price ranges up to the $1 million price range, or even slightly over $1.2 million, $1.3 million, that's become our new $1 million mark in my opinion. But
Can I,
you've
a
got,
question pops into mind that I want
yeah,
to ask you, and maybe some of our listeners are thinking about this right now. You said the inventory was down around 348, and now it's up to more like 600,
660, 665.
660. So, and I know this is always a loaded question because the word normal is relative, but how does this 660 compare to what you may feel, or what your industry there might feel is more of a normal inventory? I'm trying to get a sense for our listeners of how close or far are we from what may be considered a normal inventory level.
Great question, Dave. That's a real great question. And in Santa Clarita always fluctuates. They fluctuate in every market, but I would say somewhere around 800 to 900, somewhere in that ballpark would seem, or even 1,000.
We're still a little short.
We're still a little low, but it has picked up. We're still in the seller's market, in my opinion, where our inventory is not picked up, dramatically going over to 1,500, 2,000, something like that, like back in the crash where it got even higher than that, So we're okay right now. Still, I would have to say, really kind of more of a neutral market. Really, maybe neutral sellers a little bit, somewhere in that ballpark. Not really a buyer's market so much, but more neutral, really, if I had to pick one of the
Just
three.
looking at it from a mathematical perspective, if you're saying about, let's just say, arguably 800-ish to 850 is normal,
Yeah.
then it would make sense that if you're below that, it's leaning a little bit more towards the seller's market. And if you're above that, that might be leaning a little bit more towards the buyer's market. And at 850, you're going to be pretty balanced. Or am I oversimplifying that?
No, that's pretty close. But here's the challenge. So that's our supply, right? Now we have to use the other half of the equation, the demand. And that's where the game gets a little more interesting, because our demand has slowed. Like I said, when we were getting close to that 6% rate level, things were picking up. They were starting to move really nicely. And then, not only did the rate shoot up, but then all the tariff talk. And here's one thing I did want to mention about that we were talking about earlier, Dave, with discussions of tariffs and taxes and interest rates and all these things that affect the market. Another thing that really affects the market, even maybe more than Jerome Powell, our Fed chair, is the media. They could really move markets, or they could stop markets. They start talking about things or pushing their agenda or slinging things their direction or their side for whatever reason they're doing, left, right, whatever. It has an effect on the market. I see it every time. I'm watching the news and they start beating up the market and people are getting scared. I get phone calls, or even looking on YouTube, and you see the distressed property levels are increasing. And we're going to talk about that right now too. And because I want to talk about that and bring that up, and I ran the numbers on this, is because if you go to YouTube channels or even some different social media or even news outlets, we'll talk about distress levels are increasing. Short sales, foreclosures, those are our distress levels, right? Our distressed properties. And guess what? We took a look at the numbers, and I'm going to share those numbers with you right now. It's really interesting because they are really low overall, nationally, incredibly low, like around 1% and under. Vegas had increased a little bit. It's around 2% now, getting close to 2%, but they always fluctuate. And I'm talking short sales and foreclosures. In Los Angeles, right now, Los Angeles County, which is a huge county, okay, one in every 3,629 housing units would have any kind of a distressed issue at all. I mean, it's that low. So I'm always hearing the fear mongers or the scare tactics coming on, talking about the distressed market, and it's not there. There's no distressed properties. It's super low. It's just non-existent.
If I may
basically.
echo a comment that you just made, I was just thinking as you were talking about the media and its effect, given that the average consumer doesn't have a direct phone line to the White House or Jerome Powell's office, the
Right.
only way that the majority of consumers have of knowing anything about what's happening is through the media.
Correct.
So
a lot of times,
theoretically, the media could take what may be reality coming out of either Washington or the Federal Reserve or statistics. And I'm not saying that they do, but theoretically, they could spin that any way they want. And the only way that all of us out here get to find out, unless you've got somebody on the inside, most
Right.
95, 99% of the consumer population out there gets what they know about the news from the media, whether it's
Yeah.
newspapers, whether it's social media, whether it's news, it's all media. So the news media in our country has an incredibly powerful tool that has to be wielded very carefully when sharing
Absolutely.
knowledge. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, I would agree with you that more often than not, it's not pure news, it's drama, it's entertainment. And so that becomes very difficult because when you're not getting a clear picture, how do you know how to react? And then
100%.
you can panic very easily.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed, 100%. And you and I know because we have different clients that we've worked with through the years who have brought up that, hey, we're going to wait. We're going to wait. We're not going to buy right now. Well, rates have improved. They're very nice right now. There's some nice homes that you're seeing out there. We're going to wait. It's like there's just this fear of going forward, especially for some first-time home buyers. And then we find out that they've talked to somebody like Uncle Bob at a barbecue, or someone in the family has talked to them and scared them because this person is scared and they're watching the news and they're bringing all that to the barbecue or family, wherever they're at, and they're sharing that energy with everybody. Then of course they want to stop and just keep renting and wait for the market to crash, the big market crash. Well, I don't know how many buyers I had shared this with. I said, listen, we talked about the distressed property level as we did right now, which has been the same pretty much. I mean, again, slight fluctuations, but really right now, just non-existent. In all the 3 states I work in, looking at in Los Angeles County and across the nation, it's nothing. But if there's a couple percolate up a little bit, we get a couple of 4, 5, 6, or it goes from 1% to 1.5% or 2%, you'll get somebody on the news or someone on YouTube is just going to blow that story up. Distressed property levels are increasing. Get your money out of the bank. Here comes the big crashola, right? I mean, we see it all the time.
Well,
Please, you guys have got to stop it.
to your point, I think this brings up a very important point that I think you and I are always trying to share with our clients and our consumers and our listeners is, Americans, a large number of Americans have forgotten how to question. They hear something, they take it in at face value. My offering to our listeners and to our clients is, hey, take a step back, maybe ask some questions and go to your professionals. If you have a question about real estate and you hear something on the news, instead of
Right.
jumping up about it, instead of
Yeah.
panicking over it, reach out to Cash and say, hey, Cash, I heard something. Is this real, or should I be panicking and packing to move to Canada, or should I just settle down? If
Right.
you hear something about Wall Street or about interest rates, about stocks, reach out to Cash and he'll connect you with me, because one of the things that we are not a dramatized resource. We are a pure resource. So if you hear something on the news, or Uncle Bob tells you something, or you see something in the newspaper or whatever, the first step you should take is to question what you're looking at. Don't always assume everything you hear is true.
Right.
And then take a step back and question it. Reach out to Cash. Reach out to me. Reach out to us and say, hey guys, I heard this out there. Is this real? What's I don't know what feedback you have there, Cash.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, we've not only been in the industry for a long time and work with people on a daily basis. We're boots on the ground, right? We are in it every day, living, breathing, eating, talking about real estate and mortgages and rates and
Well, and
the
also to a
economy.
various different number of markets.
Yes, and work in various different markets. And I tell you, we've
We
got a
have good
really
markets, bad markets, up markets, down markets, dangerous markets, treacherous markets, happy markets, sad markets. We've been through most of it.
correct. And me with my connections and my I got the whole West Coast covered over here pretty much, right? I can gather a lot of intel by not only looking at the data, which we do, you and I do, we look at the data, and our producer, Amelia J, she provides us with a lot of amazing data. She is the data queen, boy. She could find out some information for you, unbelievably so. And then we could dissect that and look at that and explain it to people so they have an insight. You got to look at the data, but then again, you also need additionally the boots on the ground, the people in the area that are in that market that are working that, so they can really let you know what they're seeing, feeling, what the vibe is, what the energy is, and then see how it all correlates together and come up with your own thoughts on that, instead of whatever the news is saying, right, Dave?
Well, and another thing that comes to mind just for entertainment purposes, I tend to watch a lot of these shows that they have on, the miniseries on Netflix and this and that, streaming shows. And if you ever think about this, when there's a crime committed, emotion has nothing to do with it. It's all about the evidence. It's about the facts. You look at the facts, you look at the evidence, you use the evidence and the facts to draw a conclusion. And I would encourage people to do the same thing when it comes to your financial decisions. Don't make emotional decisions. I mean, the choice of a house and how you like a house, yes, that's an emotional decision.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at the financial aspects of it, you see something on the news, you hear something from a neighbor, you've got to do your due diligence and research the facts, gather the evidence, and then make it a conclusion.
Absolutely right. 100%. Research is the king. And, speaking of that about emotions and real estate, that kind of segues into the next topic we could talk about real quick is robots and robotics and AI. It's all coming for you. It's all coming for all of us. Either it's going to help us or it might be coming for your job. So, keep an eye on these things. Do your research, do your due diligence right now because it's already in motion. I've seen some of these robots out there, like the Atlas robot and some of these other ones that are actually doing chores and laborious jobs. They're carrying things around and they've got the hands that move. I've seen one dancing. It was dancing pretty fluidly. It looked pretty real to me. Dance better than I do. I mean, I don't know if I'm the best dancer around. I think so all the time when the music's going, but I'm told a few times I should probably sit down and not dance so much. But anyways, that's another story. Anyways, so the robots are coming. The AI, as we all know, the bots out there, from bots to Zillow's estimates and everything that is gathering, as we talked about, data. They're in a nanosecond like that.
If I may interject something very quickly, just the other day, Tuesday of last week, Tesla gave its quarterly announcement, and it was bad. It was not as bad as people thought, but it was bad. And then what's really interesting is every day since then, with the exception of maybe today and a little bit on Friday, Tesla stock is actually up from that announcement because, and again, real or not, or verified or not, the same day that Tesla did that announcement, in the theme of what you're talking about, Donald Trump he made some announcement about it, promoting or supporting of Elon Musk's robo-taxis. And of course, Wall Street got a little excited. And so for 2 days after that, the stock rallied up, a good 10-15%, which is huge.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the point. So you think about it, how do you feel about sitting in the back of a taxi and there's no driver?
I think some people already.
How do you feel about it? I'm not quite sure how comfortable I feel, but how do you feel?
Amelia J., you have something to say about that? What's your thought about that?
I am not a fan of the robo-taxi. And here's why.
Not a fan.
Have you seen them? Because they're out in LA, they're out in probably San Francisco, and they're out in Las Vegas. And they are very small. It's a small, no front end, no back end. It's just like the little cart.
And no driver.
And no driver. So you just have, first off, I've never Ubered because I like to drive. I am very cautious of who I get in the car with.
She is El Capitano.
But that's the same reason for the robo-taxi, not to knock on it. If it was something bigger, I'm sure they're going to come out with more luxurious vehicles that self-drive. We were going to get the Hummer. I thought it was pretty damn awesome. I don't know about the small, tiny little robot taxi that's overshadowed by the SUVs on the road, by the crazy drivers, especially if you're in a big city where people tend to travel a lot or where people tend to come and vacation a lot and they have no idea where they're going. So they go from this lane and go all the way across there. So I don't know how much the robot can pick up that, I'm lost, Mr. Driver, and I can't figure out what lane I need to get there. So what? There's, 50 cars behind me. I'm still going to veer off and cross over those roads. No, I will not get in one of those. It's too small.
The good news is, though.
Sorry,
the
as
good
much
news
as I
is
share your as everybody's desire for technology to advance, I have to admit from a very personal place, I feel Amy in the sense that if I was, you won't find me in the back of a taxi with no driver. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm not saying I'm for it. But for me to be able to get in the back of a taxi with no driver, I think I'd have to see a little bit stronger record of no accidents. Even regardless of the size of the thing, I'm not sure I'm quite comfortable sitting in the back of a taxi. I'd have my heart in my mouth the whole time.
Well, Dave,
I,
I'd be okay with it. I'd be okay with the robot driving me as long as they're not texting while they're driving. They can't text while they drive. Sorry, robots. Can't do it. They probably don't
you
need
know,
to anyways.
if there was a New York City taxi cab driver like update install that they had where they took, I'm sure there's some kind of metrics that they can have with New York City taxi cab drivers, how they drive, how they navigate through the city and get there, because I've spent many times in those cabs. If they can implement that into some of these automated self-driving taxis, that'd be great. I don't know how
Yeah.
you make it go from, real person that did it to computer, but I know that there's so many more advancements that are coming out each and every day. They have, I want to share the Atlas robot. I don't know if I could share him on the screen right now, but maybe I can upload it after. He's pretty damn awesome. He's not your typical robot. He moves and bends and dances and like flips around. And then there's another robot named Adam that they're coming out with, and he's a bartender. I don't know why they're all he, but apparently all my robots are all he. So
Yeah. What's with that?
bartender and a barista, and he can make boba. How about that? So all these robots that are doing all sorts of things that the average job that these require, I don't know. How many people do you know that are excited to go make their coffees? I know some. Some of them are awesome. Sometimes it's awesome to go into a coffee shop and people that know and they make the most amazing cup of coffee you've ever had.
Are we talking, Amy, about robots making our coffee now? Is that what's happening? They've taken over the baristas?
A combination. I don't think that robots are going to take over everything. I don't think that, every person is going to want a robot to make something. Unless, say, it's in my house and Rosie the robot comes to vacuum and fold laundry. Sure. Have at it, Rosie. I am waiting still since the days of the Jetsons. I am still waiting for Rosie to come and do that. And there are things, robot vacuums that they'll move around the floor, but they're not foolproof. You still have to
No.
go and clean them out. They get stuck. They get Nerf bullets. They get all sorts of other things. They get caught up on targets.
If I may just interject a distinction, I was going to say, if I may just interject a distinction for me, and maybe it's the analytical nature of how I'm wired, but a robot that's making my coffee or making my bartender drink or maybe cleaning my house is one thing, and a robot driving a taxi where my safety could be at risk. There's also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they're talking about automated semis driving cross country.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, in the same, yeah, oh yeah, I think Tesla's working on this. I think it's Tesla. Don't quote me on this, but yeah, automated semis. You're talking about 18 wheelers with 1 and 2 trailers driving cross country with AI. And there's another really interesting concept of AI. The three of us sitting here, we can drive, we can do something, and we can be proactive, meaning before something happens, we could anticipate what's going to happen and then behave accordingly. AI has no predictive possibility. AI is 100% built on, this is from an engineering, from a technical perspective, AI is 100% built on past experience. So the only way that AI would learn is if you took a whole bunch of New York taxi drivers, take all of their driving and then put it into a machine. And the way that AI operates is the future replicates the past. If you take AI and you put a robot or a car in a situation that no human being has ever experienced before, you're done.
So Let's talk about real estate, though. Robots
Sorry,
and
I
real
can't.
estate.
I don't know enough about New York taxi cab drivers because I'm from Southern California.
So
Well, Amelia's from New York.
I guess a lot of the self-driving, because it goes through satellite, it goes through GPS, it goes through whatever maps have been installed, and then it also reads the lines in the road. I know that Teslas, it'll show you, like the little people walking across the street, and it kind of it gets the figures right um, for crosswalks and stuff. Then let's talk about robots that could be real estate agents and doing
Right.
different jobs, because
Yeah.
if they're going to be baristas and they're going to be, you know, performing like this
Yeah.
Atlas robot where he's
Yeah.
making leaps and bounds from
Yeah.
Boston Dynamics, what about let's kind of like see what it would be like, because there was a company that actually had, I don't know if you remember, it was up in Silicon Valley. There was a company that had robots showing apartments, but I think it was more of a tablet on a screen
Yep.
that kind of followed the
Correct.
person around. Do you remember that?
That's exactly right. Yes.
It was a few
I
years
remember that.
ago.
Didn't go so well. Didn't go so well.
No, no, and there's still going to be mistakes, but at the same time, there definitely could be. I could see. I don't know about for selling a house, but I could definitely see for buying a house for people that are new to an area, moving somewhere where they don't know the lay of the land, and they really want to get a good feel. Those people that are like, "Hey, I want to see a house like Santa Clarita, right? There's 9 different towns in Santa Clarita. So what if they picked a few houses in each? And you could say, well, Acton is very different than Valencia, and Valencia is different than Canyon Country. Newhall has a different vibe, or there's Saugus, or there's Castaic. You can
Right.
explain that. Or some people like to actually go see, get the feel for themselves. So if there
Get the
is a
feel.
robot, they could meet them at, say, 20, 30, however many houses, right? It's not going to drain the robot, but
Right.
he's gonna have, again, with the he on the robot, but the robot will have all the different information on the house, all the different specs, and then
Yeah.
all the active listening on the buyer. That I don't know how that would work. Would it be one robot that just goes with that same person? Or would it be automation where it's like, you saw robot A in this house in Valencia, and then you go over to Saugus to see a house and you're with robot, B200, and then do
Right.
they all talk to each other? Oh, you have client number 7015. Okay, great. Well, they're looking for a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom. They didn't like the small backyard here. They really would like a pool, and then would they all talk to each other? That would be some
Yeah.
interesting system that could be built out. I could
Right.
see that happening.
Like Amy, I was just talking to some clients I was referred to that are going to be moving to Las Vegas, and they're looking
Mhm.
for a 3-2 single story. They want a yard big enough for a dog. Okay, that robot could probably get all that data put in pretty quick. I don't see that being too much of a problem. But where I do see the problem for someone like my job in real estate, or even Dave's job, because they could be coming after lending, because that's even more data, less of an emotional type of a position. But real estate, there has to be a high level of emotional intellect, and that's the one item I think is going to be crucial. And I think they're going to have a tough time with that one. That's going to be the last element. I think that if they could get that figured out and install that into a computer where computers can understand that, that's game over. I think. I mean, that's going to be scary.
Not to talk myself out of a job, but I would certainly agree that the emotional human component of a realtor's interaction is substantially, magnitudely more. What I do, credit, income, asset, debt analysis, debt ratios, LTVs, all that, it's largely technical. Now, there is a human aspect of it because a lot of people get very, very anxious and need a lot of hand holding through the details of this process.
Right.
But by and large, the content of what we're doing is not emotional information. It's actually very technical, data driven information. As a matter of fact, case in point, compared to when I first started in this business 32 and a half years ago, almost every decision here is with very little exception, is made by an automated underwriting system, which uses what? AI, automated intelligence based on past history of loans and successful loans and foreclosures to approve loans. So a lot of investors say, well, for me to approve this, the computer has to approve. So that part of it is definitely already automated. The part that is where I come in is explaining the different options to the client, hand-holding the client, walking them through, gathering the documentation, making sure that what's going into the automated intelligence machine is accurate.
Right.
But I would certainly agree with you that the emotional component of what I do is negligible and fails in contrast to the emotional component of what you do, Cash.
Yeah, Dave, I would say real estate, and I've been at this 18 years, that is a huge portion. That is one element that cannot be replaced. And I mean, parts of your job too, and mine especially, is like we're like the hairstylist or a psychologist. You know, we're doing our job, but we're listening to how you're feeling, the emotional feelings that you're having, based around whatever's happening with your hairstyle, or how can we make you look better that day, or a different feel, or a different cut, or a different style. Same thing in real estate. There's so many elements. In our training too, we also learn about communication skills. We have to be really good at communication skills. And part of that is understanding the different personality styles out there, so we could try to understand what personality style they are quickly and be able to share the data and the information that would be more applicable to that style, that personality style. You know, if you've got a driver personality, you want some quick information, bottom line me, let's go, pal, and you're giving them all these analytics, you're going to drive that guy crazy. And vice versa, right? If I have an analytical, but I'm talking like a driver, I'm like, hey, buddy, this is how it is. Let's go. What do you think? You know, it's a red house, whatever. You know, they're going to hate that. They want to know the numbers. They want to know the details, the analytics going into that decision. And so that is another element that I don't think robots are going to be able to get that figured out. If they do, again, like I said, game over, but I don't think so.
Well, we had a conversation recently, and the example I drew is, let's say you and a couple that wants to buy a house, and you're standing in the kitchen, and they're at the decision point of, after doing a home inspection, whether or not they want to move forward.
Right.
You have the ability as a human being to look at them, to look at the look on their faces, to feel the emotion and the interaction between the two of them and how that translates to a possible decision. There is no robot on the planet that's going to pick that up. And that is one of the examples of certain aspects of a human interaction that if you were a robot standing in that room, you standing in that room being able to read them and just empathize with whatever they're going through, might make the difference between them buying and not buying that property, whereas a robot they'd be powerless against that. They would have no way of assimilating that emotion. Yeah,
I agree. I think so as well.
That was an example that you and I used on a previous podcast, describing exactly why there's not going to be any scenario in which a realtor is replaced by AI.
Well, I think that AI and robotics can help improve our jobs, which they already are, and we're using them in marketing all the time. And for gathering data, it's amazing. It really helps speed up the process in a lot of ways. But will it replace like I said, the emotional and human element? No, I don't think so at all. Another part is negotiating. You know, there's so many details, so many dynamics that go into negotiating something. And we have multiple negotiations to a property. You may have worked with a realtor before and think, hey, if a robot can be a barista, they could be a realtor. Well, that's because maybe you worked with a realtor one time, it was a bad experience, or they were so good at their job, things just went smoothly, and before you know it, you were sitting into a lane or sitting in a beautiful home, right? Like that.
I'm going to go out on a limb. They did the
job well.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say at very best, robots will assist human beings in their jobs.
Yes, that's my thought. And that's where I'm at. So calm down out there. Don't worry too much, but pay attention and bring it into your job and use it to the best of its abilities and your abilities, right? I will add one more thing I did forget real quick. Zestimates. Okay, we're talking about AI again, doing the Zestimates, Zillow's estimates, and even Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin, whatever, automated value models where they pull data and they're going to come up with a home valuation for you, which everybody looking to buy or sell a house, or even if they're just looking to maybe refinance or whatever the case might be, where do they go, Dave?
Zillow or Redfin or
Yes. Ding, 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 ding. Give him a new car. What do you want?
Movoto
Well, he's already
or
got 14 cars. You don't need more.
Realtor.com or whatever have you. Yeah.
Realtor.com. Oh, they go to all those models. Yeah. Zillow's number one. Zillow is
Homes.com, whatever have you.
right. Yeah. And they look up their home valuation and they base a lot of things based on what they see on Zillow. Zillow is like the Bible, right? It's not, but they feel it is.
It was one of the first. It was one of the first automated engines that did this. So it's probably one of the more popular, but it doesn't
Correct.
by any means mean it's the best.
Spot on, 100%. So one thing, as we've talked about in previous podcasts too, that the robot would have to take this into the equation as well, is that there are 12 states in the United States that do not disclose the property sale of the home. So in states like Idaho, you go to look at his estimate, it's going to be skewed because they can't pull all the data. The realtors can on MLS, but the robots can't unless they start giving the robots access to MLS. Maybe a robot goes and gets its license and now it's got access and pays its MLS dues and fees and passes all those classes. Now it could get into the MLS and maybe it could find the information. But like me in 3 states, I have to be licensed, registered, and pay dues and fees on each MLS in each state just so I can have access to that. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns about any of these states, I'm connected, literally and figuratively, right?
Well, and just to echo your point, I think that reemphasizes my thought that at very best, robots will assist humans.
AI, I think, is being implemented like crazy, and I think next year we're going to be at a point where AI is intertwined and woven into so many things right now. I'm personally starting to see a little bit of a battle of AIs, and it's already knocking another kind of AI like, oh, that AI sucks. Move over and pay our fee for our subscription over here. We got the better AI. We do, this, that, and the other thing, and then some more. So I think it's going to be an exciting year of change. I think that there's going to be, probably a lot more bumps and bruises in some things. Hopefully not robot taxis crashing into things, anything bad. I probably still won't get one, but I don't Uber either. So there you go. But do I use other automated things? Absolutely. Does it make things easier? Of course. And why not? I think everybody's always looking for a way to make things more efficient, be able to have more downtime, be able to make your job move more effectively. So bring it on. Bring on all the great things. I think it's exciting.
I like it. I do too. Bring it on, AI and robots. Bring on the whole lot of you. Come on.
That should be our slogan for our next podcast. Bring it on, AI.
Bring it on, AI. That's right. All right. I don't Uber either. I like that for a t-shirt.
Us. And Cash, maybe you want to remind our listeners about reaching out to us if they have feedback or questions.
Well, Dave, I think you just did a fine job of that. Absolutely. As Dave said, if you have questions, need anything you want to talk about, find out some data in a particular area of market or what the mortgage rates are doing or prices or valuations in your market, just reach out. Let us know. We're happy to help out. We're happy that you joined us tonight on the podcast. We're glad that our producer, Amelia J., joined us tonight. Thank you, Amy. And Dave, happy to have you on board once again. Sorry?
Or would you actually work with a robot realtor? If you were buying a house, would you want a robot with you, assisting you on making a purchase? I want to hear some of the thoughts. I'm curious, just out of curiosity.
Hey,
or
I think that's
a robot their cup of coffee, or would you want a robot, making your martini if you're out? I don't know. I don't know about the bartending robot. It could be good for a service bar that's serving the cocktail waitresses. But I think a lot of people, when you go out, you want that whole experience. You want that community. You want that there's an appeal to this sexy waiter or waitress. There's something about that personal touch that you have when you're ordering from a person. And I'm Italian, so when you're making food or you're making a drink or you're making something, there's there's the ingredients, but then there's our hands, there's our creativity, there's all of that that goes into it as well. So
Absolutely. Well,
Well,
I,
think about one of
no,
the oldest, most fun bar series, Frasier. The
yeah.
relationship that was built between the customers and the
years, you mean?
owners of the bar. People went to that bar because it felt like home. How
Because
much do
everybody
you
knows your
think
name,
different that would be if
right?
instead of the
Yep.
bartenders behind the bar at Frasier, it was robots?
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. There you
That's
Cheers.
go.
right.
Did I say
Cheers.
Frasier? I meant Cheers. I'm so sorry. Well, it just goes to show I'm getting older too. But yeah, the series Cheers.
Yeah.
Would the patrons have had the relationship with the bar if it was robots behind there making their drinks?
Yeah. You know why? The one thing robots will not, another thing they won't be able to produce is energy. Maybe they could. I don't know. Maybe. I hope not. But the vibe, the energy from people that people put out and that you pick up on and then you socialize with. And that's magic right there, when that
You
happens.
know how many people that you see this in every single movie you watch? Someone goes into a bar, they sit down, they get a bar, and what do they start doing immediately? Talking to the bartender.
Yeah.
Having a conversation with a bartender. I mean, I don't go to bars that often, but on the rare occasion that I do, or I'm waiting for my food, there's always the bartenders are so engaged with the patrons. It's hardly anybody that's just sitting there drinking away without any contact with the bartender.
They are the eyes and ears of that institution.
Yeah,
They know what's
and they
going on,
create.
right?
Yeah, you almost like you don't really know this person, but you have this weird symbiotic relationship where they talk about themselves. You get to. It's almost like a therapist that's offering you alcohol. And
Right. Exactly.
how do you
Right.
imagine that a robot's going to do that?
How do you do it? How do you
How do you
replace that?
imagine a human being's going to want to do that with a robot?
Right. Yeah. Super interesting. Super interesting. But as Amy was saying earlier, do you see people working with robots in real estate, having them show them properties? Maybe. Writing contracts and negotiating deals and listing and marketing their home? I don't think so. I think that would be much harder side. And to the buyer agents out there in the world, I'm not saying that your job is any easier. That job is very hard as well. A lot of skill goes into that, a lot of patience. You have to have an incredible amount of patience to be a real good buyer's agent and a listener. And of course, being able to access all the data and knowing what's going on in the market and what your buyer is looking for so you can match that up as best you can, right? And then negotiate the best deal, present the best file. There's a lot of elements involved in successful buyer's agents. But listing agents, they have to invest their own money, their own time, their reputation into that deal. And they better know what's going on. They've got to listen to the seller and they got to know what's going on in the market and how to match that property up and present to the market in the right capacity and do it quickly too. Get it done right, efficiently, and to the most maximum way that you possibly can bring it to the market, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Tapped out, huh? Okay, we're tapping out here this evening. Thanks for joining Cash Talks.
I think that's a wrap.
We got a wrap here, ladies and gentlemen. So thanks for joining Cash Talks. We'll be excited to see you back here next week. And if you want more cash in your life, hit that subscribe button.